subsidiary company of Emprise Can Read. As promised, today we are going to be eating some actual food that I myself have made. Hopefully I'm gonna try not to let it slide off the plate. This is called apple bottom curry. And it's like a regular curry, but as I'm sure you can presume from the title, there are actually apples in it. It's a sort of a sweet curry. If you've ever had, a curry in a restaurant, they'll probably be pretty spicy. And I do like me a spicy curry, of course, but I kind of like to add a little flair every once in a while. And it goes into today's episode's theme, which will be creativity. I also have some little bit of a dessert here. This is chocolatey covered caramel corn. We're just going to try to expand our horizons here and see what works. Because as we know, with creativity, you just have to try a lot of different things until something finally hits. Another thing I'd like to try out would be just having a goofy little drink every time I do one of these videos. And today, if you can see, I have a Sailor Moon. I can't see focus on here, so I'll just assume at some point it enters focus. But it's a Sailor Moon Ocean Bomb pomelo flavored sparkling soda. We had these. It's kind of like a little practical joke during our Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And I have some left over, so why not? And if you are interested, of course, in the apple bottom curry, for now I'm actually going to start doing the recipes in the description box below. And if I forget to do it, then please comment and harass me until I get it done correctly. Also, hopefully this retains some level of heat, otherwise I'll have to go back and forth to the microwave to keep warming it up. So let's get started and crack open Sailor Moon here. Hopefully this isn't too loud. I'm trying to do it as quietly as possible. Can you hear that little fizz? Is there fizz? Kinda. Whatever. We'll take a drink. Pomelo. I don't know what that is. Oh well. Let us get started on the eating and discussing. First, let's take a bite. By the way, it's not just apples that are in here. There is chicken as well. Chicken and onions and fenugreek leaves and kind of a secret ingredient. Not really if I'm going to be adding it to the description box, but peanut butter is also in it. Peanut butter is an amazing sort of bonus ingredient to a lot of Indian dishes or Thai dishes, and I'll get into that later actually. But first, let's take a bite. And of course, we can't forget the rice. I suppose to start off, regarding creativity, is that there is a sort of technical way of looking at it, a sort of scientific method to it. It's not always just something is art just because you say it's art, or something is just, really deep and meaningful and special just because you say it is. There has to be there's a sort of schematic to it. I was just in a museum with W. Price, and we saw a visual exhibit there, and the visual exhibit was, gotta leave you hanging with my bites. Was a man who wanted to demonstrate the circle of life by stripping down naked, getting into a giant tub of salt, swimming through the salt like this, and then going out into the wilderness and waiting for elk to come up to him and lick the salt off as part of the cycle of how salt moves. And watching that, one may, look at it and go, what the hell is this? And I think that's where, you don't need a blueprint to make it good or to make it meaningful to you or meaningful to other people, but you definitely need a blueprint to sort of have that basis of understanding. Because if you don't have that, then people like me, or I'm sure every other person who went through that exhibit, is going to look at this naked man swimming in salt and being licked by animals in the wilderness and go, what is this? This is crap. This is pretentious. That's usually where you'll hear that word, pretentious or condescending, or, just holier than thou on a pedestal. Just why say artists have a bad reputation as just being these egomaniacs, because they do things like that, and they don't really reach their audience in the way that they're probably desiring to. Hopefully they're desiring to reach their audience. But basically what I'm trying to say is, you can't just really create out of thin air. You need to have a plan. And that's sort of the first step, I would say. And the second step is practicing the common structure until you master it. And it's a lot like a curry, as a matter of fact. Look, curry. Because most curries, regardless of their end game, will start with, okay, you have oil, whatever preferred oil you have, and then you add an onion, and then you'll add your spices, and then you'll have usually ginger and garlic, whether it's fresh, whether it's dried, whether it's a ginger garlic paste. Then you'll add either, broth, or you'll add a coconut milk, or you'll add tomato paste, and you have these sort of different branches that you could go that would make a curry. And the core curry principles are the same, and it's just a matter of what ingredients you want to pick out as you go. And usually towards the end of the curry making process is when you get to add your interesting ingredients. So for me, this curry is pretty standard, standard chicken curry. But when I have my broth and I'm simmering the curry, that's when I add the apples. And then the apples have that nice sort of half caramelized, not too soft and mushy, but not too hard and crunchy flavor. Texture, good flavor. And then I add the peanut butter towards the end when it's hot, and the peanut butter can sort of melt into the curry and add that sort of lasting nuttiness to it. And wait a second, I get on my tangents too much. I can't actually eat. But before you can add the apple vegetables, and before you can add the peanut butter, or whatever your ingredient may be, you're going to want to practice just plain Jane chicken curry. That way you can get the basics down and the core elements, the core blueprints down. Because only then are you able to really add your true flair to make it yours, to make it personal, to really get creative. But that's, in order to really get your style and your flair, you just have to keep practicing those core values, the core, whether it's, story beats in writing, or whether it's, the basics of a curry or a pasta or a chili. You have to practice just the core method and to get everything, set in stone and ingrained in your mind before you can really start to play and experiment. You'll notice even like musicians, a lot of musicians are like classically trained. They'll have played Bach and Beethoven and Mozart, but now they're playing like, metal or jazz. Well, regardless of what you do, for your own personal style and fun, you still have to have those foundations and those building blocks. But once you can add your personal flair, that's when, of course, it gets very fun. How I started to add my personal flair in curry. Oh God, am I revealing myself as a huge nerd? Was through this little game called Persona 5 on the PlayStation 4. It's like a role-playing game basically, where half the game you're like fighting monsters, but half the game you're like a teenage student and you're just going throughout your daily life. But what makes it interesting is what you do in your daily life affects what you can do to like monsters. So hanging out with certain friends makes your, abilities stronger, or if you have like a day job after your school life, then you can get money to buy more items. Just kind of interesting stuff like that. And one of the characters in it that you can talk to is like your foster parent, pretty much. And he teaches you how to make coffee and, conveniently, curry. And every time you do curry or coffee with him, he'll give you a fact about it. And his curry facts were around secret ingredients that you could add to your curry. So it was like chocolate or steak sauce or apples or peanut butter. And I saw that and I'm like, I kind of want to add, one of those or a couple of those and try it out. So that's how I developed my recipe, because I mastered like the core curry recipe. And then after that, I want to try the steak sauce one. I want to try chocolate. I want to try implementing all these other crazy flavors until I found one that, I enjoyed, which would be, the apples. I had, yogurt instead, vanilla yogurt, a lot of cinnamon, and then, my peanut butter at the very end. Interesting. When I first drank this, it was like pretty good. But now that I have like the aftertaste of the curry in my mouth, it like fuses with this. And it makes a different sort of flavor. I don't know how to describe it. Oh well. But that added flair is what people, like the public, will interpret as, creativity or your personal artistic style. And sometimes style styles are really complex. Sometimes they're subtle, and sometimes your style is something that only you will ever be able to perceive, and that might be so refined and subtle that the average person won't even realize it. But you yourself will know how much work you put into it, whether it's the work developing your style, or whether it's the amount of practice it took to get to the point where you could even start to develop a style. Now in cooking, something that, means a lot to me is a chef named Marco Pierre White. He's kind of like, the guy before Gordon Ramsay. And a lot of times when he was cooking, he would say, don't worry about it. There's no real recipe. Because when it does come down to like a tomato sauce or a lasagna or a chili or a stew, there is no real recipe. It's kind of just whatever you prefer. But the reason he's able to say that, to not follow a recipe, to not bog yourself down with rules, is because he himself has mastered the rules. It's only at this point in his life where he knows everything there is to know that he can truly begin to break free from that rule set, from those chains, and really start to experiment and have fun. And sometimes even just like, quote unquote experimenting is just maybe adding a little extra seasoning, a few different herbs that no one else would add. And it's that, I think that refinement is where it really gets fun, because, you don't have to be really ostentatious and complex. You can just have a nice, simple sauce, or a book, or a movie, or, just anything that you want to create. And just add just a little flair just to make it your own, because at the end of the day, there's not a lot out there that's truly unique. And even just adding a little bit of a change, is enough. If you go to like the pasta sauce aisle in your grocery store, there'll be, 20 different brands of tomato sauce. And they're all pretty much the same, right? Only just slightly different. Because tomato sauce or curry or anything else at its core is just basically, the same kind of thing, just with a little style here and there, put into it. Your style may even become so refined that you yourself don't even notice it. You just do it by second nature. The, famous writer and filmmaker Billy Wilder, when someone asked him, how do you make your great movies? He just kind of responded, well, to be honest, as long as I have like an hour and a half of usable film, that's all right with me. And of course the interviewer just balked at, this statement from one of the best ever. Like, yeah, if I can just pull something together, that's fine with me. It doesn't need to be super complex. It doesn't need to be super intricate. Because Billy Wilder knew the core values of a film, what people wanted to see, what made it interesting, what made it cool. And of course he had a style, but his style was so ingrained into his very being that he didn't even have to worry about it while he was filming. It just came right as a second nature. And a style doesn't always have to be something that's set in stone. You could be like one of my personal favorites, David Bowie, who throughout his very long career, about 50 years of playing music, he had, a dozen different styles. He had, his very early, kind of glam rock era. He had a sort of synthwave, experimental instrumental track era, like this, like Low, my favorite album of his. He had a grunge era, a sort of progressive rock era, and then he, finished off with this sort of jazz-infused rock, all the while having different personas throughout the way, like the Thin White Duke or Ziggy Stardust or Aladdin Sane. And he always managed to keep things fresh because he was experimenting with style. He was experimenting as an artist. And, some of his personas and styles obviously had bigger commercial appeal, but he was still David Bowie throughout the entire time. And he still had that Bowie sound, He still sang in that same special way, but he would just do it with different instruments or different rhythms or different backgrounds, It was like the song of David Bowie stayed the same. It was just, the rhythm changed. And I think that's very important as an artist that you always want to. If you can't reinvent yourself and try new things and branch out into things that scare you, but at the same time you have to keep what made you in the first place. And I mean, along my writing journey, it took me, maybe 15, 20 screenplays, just, stuff I've never even shown anyone, just like really trashy things that just end up in the archives of my computer in order for me to really find my style. And now that I like to branch out, into video, like I'm doing now, or I want to do painting, I want to do music. And I've done, I've written for TV stuff as well as movie stuff and books. I want to go across different things and I want to cover different topics like humor and horror and adventure, all together and all, sort of changing with whatever I'm going through in my life or whatever I find to be interesting, because that's how you stay fresh as an artist, I think. But what do I know, I guess, I'm just a goofball. I think artistic death comes from being stale, comes from being boring. Never be boring. But, I mean, at the same time, you shouldn't have to stress being average, because a lot of people are average, and all throughout, history, how many famous authors or, musicians or dancers or any of that do we really remember? We remember the people who were special, like people like, like Prince or Mozart or just anyone who, anyone who has their own Wikipedia page maybe. And the reason we remember them is because they were unique. And yes, you should strive to be unique, you should strive to be memorable. But at the same time, if it pleases you, then, do it. Screw everybody else, If you like to do something, then, keep writing, keep cooking, keep playing, don't worry about, what the crowd says. And even if you can't find a way to make money off of it or make a career out of it or make a living out of it, just do it for yourself, do it for fun. Make it that spark that keeps you up at night. And then at this point you may be asking, how do I create a style? How do I make something that is interesting or unique? And I guess the only tips I would have for that, and they may sound very, impossible, but look at what hasn't been done before. Is there something that maybe you like in your life that you've never seen anyone else implement? I know it can be crazy, but you just try to look at what really hasn't been done before. For instance, a movie a few years ago, like The Quiet Place or whatever. I mean, certainly not the best movie ever made, but why was it so popular? Because it was like a horror movie without sound. Same with, say, Get Out, a horror movie about racism. If you have, say, a topic or an interest that hasn't been covered by anything, jump in, do that. You may not be able to explore it, say, forever, but you can certainly make a splash or make an entrance in your career with, said topic or interest. Another idea would be, what is something that you like that has been done before, but that you can flip or you can spin into your own way? What can you change? For instance, like the movie Alien, Ridley Scott's Alien. Why that was so popular and why that was so interesting was because it twisted the age-old horror story with the fact that, I guess, spoiler alert, it's the man who gets impregnated by the alien who eventually gets killed. Not the woman, not the usual damsel in distress, but the smooth, smart, competent, sexy, what's the guy's name? I forget. He died a few years ago. Whatever. That guy from Alien, the guy who dies first. And it was through the creators of that film just deciding to take a common theme, a common story, and just twisting it around so that it was unexpected for people, so that people didn't see it coming. One of the best people to die first, or even a few deaths later, the captain of the crew, who everyone thought was the star of the film, dying, and a random, seemingly random, co-crew member having to take the reins and become the hero. That had never happened before. That's why it was so popular and why it resonated with so many people. So just look at something out there that's existing right now and try to twist it to whatever you think hasn't been done before, what may appeal to other people. Correction. I'll circle back to this in a second. But did you hear my ankle snap in half there? I think the last thing you could do to implement, to create your own style, would just be to fuse multiple things you like. Say you really like H.P. Lovecraft stuff and steampunk. Create a steampunk H.P. Lovecraft story. Say you love the ridiculous violence of Game of Thrones, but you also love the silly, happy goofiness of a Disney movie. Make a Disney Game of Thrones, and then market it to Disney. Just take stuff that you're interested in and combine it. You can just create everything that you like all at once and try to find a way to weave it into one coherent story. Or all the favorite foods you have and make it into one, coherent dish. And that can be part of the play as well. Part of the idea of, okay, I love pineapple, peanut butter, hot sauce, and bananas. Now how do I combine these all into a dish that actually tastes good and not like a complete disaster? That's part of the fun in it. Now that correction I want to get back to is I said that you should create something that would appeal to most people, appeal to, God, sorry, I had trouble with my L's, I'm sure you heard by now. Something that would appeal to a lot of people. Don't necessarily do that. I don't mean that in the sense of you should do something to appeal to people, as in like following trends and then gaining that mass market appeal. I mean appealing to people through being unique and through your own individual style But you should never ever follow trends, because that is how you lose, basically any credibility as an artist. If you make something unique, if you make something special, then the people will come for it. You will get the support if you are someone who's, especially interested. If you follow trends, then you'll be very popular and you'll be very wealthy and very, quote unquote successful. But M. Price will not want to be your friend. M. Price will not think you're cool if you just do whatever is popular now and just, repackage it as something, some same old garbage, and try to convince people that, oh, this is just, this is even better. Because that's very low and shallow and not what an artist does. Never, ever, ever pander. And at the same time, never do something that you're not interested in. If you're trying out a topic or a recipe or, whatever, fill in the blank, and you just don't feel it, if you just don't care, then stop doing it. Because if you follow through on something that you don't care about, the audience, or the consumer, or the friend, or whoever you end up showing this to, is going to see that you didn't care. They're going to realize that you weren't invested in your creation as much as you should have been. And your apathy will show. I mean, it will. People can tell when you're not genuinely excited about something or genuinely compassionate about something. For instance, I am Price. At the moment, may not be genuinely compassionate about this curry, but that's because it's been sat out for 45 minutes, and it's quite cold now. It's okay, we'll power through. We don't have too much left. As I am a starving artist, I can afford to throw out food. one final thought before we get to dessert. I think the core rule, if you can gain anything from me, is to always prioritize being memorable over quality. And I don't mean quality in the sense that just make stuff that sucks, but quality in the sense of always seeking perfection. Because perfection is really boring, you know. Who cares about perfection? One of the reasons why David Bowie is, check out my David Bowie video, by the way. Why David Bowie is considered, so great, or why Michael Jackson was, or why, any, insert singer you really like, I'm sure, why they were all great, isn't because they were the perfect vocalist, because a lot of them aren't. David Bowie does not sing, quote unquote, well. It's because they had a special style. It's because no one else sounded like them. Oh God, I'm imploding. But, Kurt Cobain was a terrible singer, but he's a unique singer, which is why he was popular, He wasn't good because he sounds like he's gargling marbles, it sounds awful. But that was his style, that was his approach, and that was, his shtick, essentially. So I think you should always be memorable, because there's enough perfection out there. There's enough people who just seek, the kind of bland, you could say the academically accepted standard of art, or cooking, or woodworking, or whatever it is. And that's fine. It's definitely okay to do that. And if that's what you want, just keep doing it. But if you really want to be remembered, if you really want to be someone who people, can be inspired by and maybe help out the next generation, I think you just have to be memorable. You have to do something that no one else has done, or do something that other people have done, but do it in a new way. And it may, sound either extremely difficult or extremely simple, I suppose, depending upon your optimism. But I think it is possible, because as much as people say, oh, everyone's addicted to TikTok and social media, and there's no real good art anymore, that's a lie. There will always be amazing people doing amazing things. It just kind of comes down to how hard you have to look to find them. It's certainly a lot harder in this day and age to find them, but there are still amazing artists. And I encourage you to go on that journey to search them out, as well as I encourage you to become one yourself. But I don't know. All I have is Sailor Moon right now. And some caramel corn that hopefully makes a decent sound. All right, let's go. Dessert. Usually I have such perfect posture, but it's hard to do because I'm on my couch. Do you think I'm neurotic? That's a big piece. All right. Let's give it a big old chomp. was hoping for half and half, not like the entire thing to come off. But yeah, this is it. My orthodontist will be so mad at me. Oh my God. What have I done? Sorry, I'm always distracted. Like I'm a dog. Dog say never sleeps. We're almost done. The suffering is almost at an end. I know food people do this. Do they eat on like heated plates? I wonder. Maybe. Like a restaurant. If you have any length of video that just gets like lukewarm and painful. Last piece. Well, thank you for joining me on my surface level journey into creativity as well as curry. Once again, the recipe should be in the description below if you're interested. If you haven't heard, I'm going to be doing these eating videos once a week, every Saturday at 6 p.m. And I'm going to kind of switch between, sometimes fast food or takeout, and sometimes food I make. Just try to have some variety. But, as you know, I am M. Price. This is M. Price Can Eat, a subsidiary company of M. Price Can Read. And as you also know, Dog City never sleeps. I hope that you may sleep.